Call to order this regular meeting of the Bloomington Commission on Sustainability at 6:02 p.m. on June 11th, 2024. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Matt.
Here.
Caitlin. Here. David. John. Jessica. Dave.
Here.
Yeah. Hannah, I'm here. Justin.
Here.
Jamie.
Here.
Alex. Dennis. And Andrew.
Here.
Thank you. Okay, so approval of the agenda. So if there are no objections, we've had a suggestion to consider moving the election of the treasurer and the secretary up to just after the approval of the meeting minutes, and then to also move up the two presentations that we have on honeybees and beekeeping, just in the interest of our guests' time.
I would like to have the staff liaison report moved up in there somewhere. The last meeting I was deferred. I gave the ability for the working groups to speak before me.
Okay, so let's handle this one first. So does anyone want to make a motion to?
I make a motion to move the elections up to the beginning, right after approval of minutes.
Seconded.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye. Okay.
The ayes have it. The election will follow the approval of the minutes.
I make a motion to move the discussion of bees to right after the election.
Seconded.
So you're not going to allow me to give my report?
We're going to do that
before?
after, and then
Our guests.
commissioners are going to be last. Reports from commissioners are
Oh,
going to be last.
reports and
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor of moving the reports from our guests up after the elections, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
The ayes have it. So we'll move that up accordingly. Does anyone else want to make any motions for any other agenda
I
changes?
want to make a motion to move public comment to right after the bees,
Public comments to right after the bees. Okay.
because that makes sense to have public comment on the topic after.
Okay, that makes sense. So we go approval of the minutes, election, guest speakers,
Yep.
and then public comment.
Yep.
Actually, I think that would just stay the same way since it's already in
Okay.
that order. right?
Okay. Well, he seconded it, by the way.
Fair enough, yeah. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it. Change
And
it.
final motion, move
Staff report.
staff report in front of reports from commissioners.
Seconded.
After public comment.
Yes, after public comment.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. So we will do the staff liaison report after the public comment.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so approval of the agenda, or I'm sorry, the minutes. So these are the minutes from our meeting on May 22nd, I believe, 2024. They're distributed by myself via email on Friday, June 7th. Are there any corrections to those minutes? Okay, hearing no corrections, without objection, the minutes are approved. And we will move to the election. So let's start with the secretary position. So I'll open the floor for nominations. Please feel free to nominate yourself or someone else who you think would be a good fit and would also be willing to serve.
We've never had any reason to have a treasurer before because we haven't had money.
Oh, this is for secretary.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
But yeah,
Oh, sorry. Treasurer.
okay, so
Nominate Hannah to be.
This is my last
secretary. This is your
meeting.
last meeting? Okay.
Yeah.
all right.
Different without your facial hair.
Well, seeing no nominations, we have no election to hold there, so we'll have to revisit that at another time. How about for treasurer? Anyone want to nominate themselves or somebody else for treasurer?
I'll just nominate myself to get it over with.
Okay, perfect. We have one nomination for treasurer. Thank you, Matt. Anybody else want to nominate themselves or someone else? Okay, great. Well, in that case, since we only have one nomination, we can just move straight to a vote unless you wanted to say any words to support your nomination.
Thanks for your vote.
It's a great campaign.
Real quick, are we guessing the treasurer will fill the role of keeping an eye on the grant money? What capacity? Do you know your job description? I guess is what I'm asking here.
That's controlled.
Yes,
There.
but I don't know how, would you be partnering with Shonda? I guess I'm asking since we've never really had need
Right.
or had a treasurer and since I've been here.
We've always had a treasurer, we just never had any money,
Okay,
so it was never an issue.
well, we did not, then we have a lame duck treasurer
Light
who did
duty.
nothing.
Would you
So-
like to nominate yourself to be
No,
treasurer? Okay.
no, this is my third to last meeting.
Okay. Oh, that's
So
right.
I'm just reminding everybody.
The bylaws say they prepare the annual budget and they identify funding sources to execute our strategic goals.
Yeah, say for example, we applied for some external grant or something and then we received it, then the treasurer would be kind of responsible for handling that side of things.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, great. Well, we'll go around the room, do a roll call vote then to elect Matt Austin as treasurer. So will the secretary call the roll?
Yes. Sorry. Matt Austin,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
let's see, Dave,
Yes.
Hannah, yes, Justin,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
and Andrew.
Yes.
All right.
Excellent. It's a unanimous vote, so congratulations to our new treasurer, and thanks for serving. We'll try for the secretary position again next month.
Please, otherwise I have to do it.
Sorry, guys.
And thank you, Hannah, for your service over the past year.
Happy to do it.
Appreciate it. Okay, great. So that now brings us in the amended agenda to the presentations from our guest speakers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So I think we're hearing first from Jason Winters.
Here?
Yeah, let's put space here.
Get the mic.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
So I keep currently 8 to 10 hives in town here. And I thought what I'd do is just start by giving you a little bit about bees, about pollinators in general, a little bit about how we manage hives, and then talk a little bit about neighborhood relations as it relates to keeping hives, particularly in an urban environment. So a couple caveats. There is an adage amongst beekeepers: ask 10 beekeepers a question, you'll get 11 answers. Some of those people would say 12. Case in point. This is simplifying a complicated topic, and so some of these things, the devil's in the details, and so, generally speaking, what I'm telling you here is accurate, but there are, details that we don't have time to get into. And finally, the bees don't read the beekeeping books, and so, they are wild animals, they will do what they want to do. So first, our food relies on honeybees. We have about 75% of the fruits, nuts, and vegetables grown in the US that are bee pollinated. And by that, I don't just mean honeybees, I mean bees in general. And so one of the things as we're thinking about sustainability is that we need to support not just honeybees, but bees more broadly and pollinators more broadly. 1 out of 4 bites of food that people take are thanks to bee pollination of some kind, according to USDA. The honeybees that we have around here are going to travel for their food. So a honeybee will generally travel about 3 miles from its hive. So you have a circle that's 3 miles wide, or 6 miles wide, excuse me. And they will go farther than that if food is scarce. So they can go 5 miles or more if they need to. They don't tend to spend a lot of time right around their hive. Bees actually communicate with each other. They do something called the waggle dance, which is actually really cool to see. They will go into the hive, they'll turn, do this kind of interesting figure 8 thing, and then they will waggle, and the turn tells them what direction to fly. The waggle duration tells them how far to fly. And so they are very capable of telling each other where the food is. And so they will go to heavy nectar flow areas, and then they will go and tap out as much of that nectar as they can. Honeybees are gentle unless provoked. And that really comes down to 2 primary areas. One, if you are standing next to the hive, they're likely to see you as a threat and they're going to sting you. And then 2, if you swat at them, if you step on them barefoot, if you do all of the things that you're not supposed to do with insects, then they are stinging insects, they will sting you if they feel like you're attacking them. That said, you're generally safe. If you're standing not right next to the hive, I'll have my kids out 20 feet from the hive while I'm doing hive inspections, not suited up, and I don't worry about it. If I'm in there in a hive doing an inspection and they start to get a little bit on the feisty side, I might tell them you might want to back up or even possibly go into the house. But generally speaking, if you're not right next to the hive, they're not going to feel terribly defensive and they're not going to go out and sting you. Honeybees tend to fly at an altitude of about 30 feet or more. So they are flying over our heads the vast majority of the time. And so what that means is if you are standing 20 feet from the hive, if you are not looking at the hive, you're probably not going to notice that there is a hive around. That said, if you look at the hive, you're like, wow, that's a lot of bees flying in and out, a constant stream of them. Honeybee stings are frequently mistaken or frequently accused of being the culprit when the sting is actually caused by something else. So when a honeybee stings, it dies. It has a barbed stinger. Then you get stung, it sticks in you. The bee actually pulls its guts out as it's flying away, and the venom stays attached to the stinger. So a bee stings is a matter of last resort. It is not good from an evolutionary perspective for the bee if they're just stinging willy-nilly. Yellow jackets, on the other hand, are kind of jerks. They will totally just sting you because you are standing near their home. You've aggravated them in some way. So a lot of the bee stings that we have tend out to be yellow jacket stings, hornets, wasps, those types of things. Beekeepers get called out very frequently to remove a hive, and we get there and it's in the ground and it's yellow jackets. So if you see something in the ground, it is not honeybees. Honeybees do not nest in the ground. So what is a hive made up of? So a hive is just the home of a single honeybee colony, and generally you're going to have one queen bee in there. That queen bee can live for years. You're going to have a lot of female workers. Those workers during the summer, spring, are going to live for 5 to 6 weeks. And then in the winter, the queen lays special winter bees that are going to be a little bit bigger and will survive for the months throughout the winter until they can start laying again in the spring. And then you have male drones in the spring and summer only. And then in the fall, they all get kicked out of the hive to die. The queen bee stays in the hive, and that is generally true. The two exceptions to that are when the queen is first born, she will go out on mating flights, she mates, and then she comes back to the hive, and then she is done. And she will stay in the hive until she either dies or she swarms and leaves with a group of bees. And we'll talk a little bit about swarming later because that's one of the areas that tends to impact neighbors. There are many types of hives. The most common in use in the United States is the Langstroth hive, and basically it's a bunch of boxes that we stack vertically. So you have these boxes, they're about like this, and they come in different heights, which you don't really need to know much about other than to say that these boxes are filled with frames, and each frame is a place where the honeybees are building comb. We will stack those boxes up as high as we need to give the bees the space they need. More boxes stacked vertically does not always mean more bees. And so as we're thinking about regulations, one of the regulations I've seen a lot is limiting the total size of the colony. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense, and I'll defer to George later if he disagrees, but a lot of times what we're doing is we're adding what we call honey supers. We're adding boxes in the top that we add later in the spring so that bees have a place to store their honey. And what they tend to do is they just keep going up. They store more and more honey, but if I were to look at one of those boxes, there aren't actually very many bees in it because they're starting to work on the ones that are up higher. Let's see here. The bottom boxes in there are usually for the queen. She's laying baby bees in there. There is some pollen that they're using as a food source, and then they'll store some honey in there so that there's honey near the brood, in other words, the baby bees that are growing up. So that's kind of the mechanics of that. And when we do an inspection, basically what we're doing is we're taking the cover off the hive, we're pulling out frames to see what we're looking at, and we're going to unstack the boxes at least partway down to see what's going on in the hive. An inspection can take 5 minutes, it can take an hour. It depends a lot on what we're looking for. Very often we're just looking to see, is there a queen in there? Is she laying eggs? Do they have enough food? So that is generally what we're managing for. We'll also look for pests that we need to manage to see if there's any disease going on, that type of thing. Swarming. So I mentioned this briefly earlier. A honeybee colony can swarm. And so this is basically how a colony reproduces. So as we think about honeybees, the biological unit tends to be the colony, not the individual bee. And so when we talk about reproduction for honeybees, we're talking about a colony reproducing. And so what'll happen is the queen bee that was living in the hive is going to fly off with a large portion of the worker bees, and they are going to go land on a tree branch or a fence post or something, and they're going to hang out there while they send out scouts looking for a new home. And so this is something that can be very scary for people because there are a lot of bees flying. It's interesting because it's also one of the times when bees are at their most docile. A honeybee that is swarming doesn't have anything to defend. Its honey gut is filled with honey because they took a bunch of resources with them, so it's actually physically hard for them to sting in that state. And so I will go out. I've had a swarm happen once this year, and I was standing in the middle of this whirlwind of bees. I was not suited up or wearing anything, and my kids said, "Can we come out?" And I said, "Sure, have a blast." And so it's actually really cool, but it is also slightly scary. So, that's one of the things where we'll get calls, "Hey, I have a swarm of bees, what do I do?" And it is a little bit nerve-wracking. And that's one of the things that we try to educate people about as we're talking about, hey, this is not going to be a terrible thing for you. It's going to be okay. They're going to land on that branch. They're going to stay there for anywhere from a couple hours to a couple days until they find a new home. And they actually have this really interesting democratic process for figuring out how to go about finding that new home. Once they're all doing the same waggle dance to say, "Yep, we're going over there," they all pick up, fly off, and head to their new home. And life is good. Meanwhile, in that original hive that swarmed, there is a virgin queen in there. She's going to hatch out. If there are any other virgins than the queen, usually what happens is she'll kill any of the other queens. And now she's the new queen. She's going to go out and mate. And then they're going to start raising baby bees again. So that's the mechanics of hives and swarms. Looking at neighbor relations. So there are a lot of things that I like to tell people when they ask about what's it like to have bees in your yard or bees next door. And one of those is that having a neighbor with hives will not usually increase the number of bees that you have in your yard. The vast majority of the time, they leave. When I first got bees, it was largely to pollinate my garden, and it's hilarious because they never pollinate my garden, invariably. I have everything. I have strawberries, I have pears, I have apples, all things bees love, and they're never there. They like to go further from home. They would, and part of that is they want sources that are very large, and so they will go out to a black locust tree that is huge. My most successful hives are near Meadowwood, and they go back up to Griffey, and those hives produce a ton because bees, as it turns out, get a lot of their nectar from trees. And they will certainly go to flowers, but trees are one of their primary sources. Hive location matters a lot as we're thinking about where to put bees, especially on an urban lot. I do not want to put a hive right next to a city sidewalk. That would be a bad idea. I don't want to put it right next to my neighbor's property line facing into their yard because they're going to fly out and up. They tend to fly out and up fairly quickly. So again, if I'm 20 feet from the hive, they're probably not going to be visible to me if I'm not facing the hive. That said, if I've got it on the property line and my neighbor wants to be sitting on their side of the property line and it's 5 feet away, this is not a good situation. And so I would either choose to move it a little bit further away, or I can put up a flyaway barrier. And that can be anything from a fence to dense vegetation. And basically what it is something that is in front of the hive that tells the bees, "Oh, well, I can't go through, so I've got to go up and over. And once I'm up, they're going to stay up until they get to wherever they're going to go forage." So flyaway barriers can be very helpful. If you're further away from your property line or sidewalk or whatever it is, not as necessary, but if it's a close call, it can be very helpful. Beekeepers should manage their hives to prevent swarming. We talked about that. And the one thing I would say about that is that it is, I think as I've been looking at regulations, limiting the number of hives is one of the things that is very often done. I would be cautious about how that's done. And the reason I say that is because if you want to prevent swarming, which is ideal for the beekeeper because we don't lose the bees or the honey, it's ideal for the public because you don't have masses of bees flying around. A lot of times you're doing things like splitting hives. So before they're getting ready to swarm, we take a hive and we split it into two. So I started the season with 4 hives, and one of those I had a swarm, and I needed to split the hive to keep them from flying off. And so now I have 5 hives. had 6 briefly and then got rid of one. So, you know, I'm trying to get back to my normal number, but yes.
Oh, I'm just thinking, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, actually, I was going to say at the beginning, please jump in with questions.
When people complain about bees, is it HOA, they don't like the boxes in the backyard, or is it like bee allergy, I'm worried about my kid getting stung?
Yeah,
What
so
sort of
I think it's a combination of both. So in my experience, HOAs will complain about everything. So yes, the HOAs will certainly complain.
Or unconvincing.
But a lot of the other questions are often, you know, fear of the unknown. They are fear of, you know, what if my kid has an allergy and I don't know it? You know, what do I do?
Yeah.
Is my kid more likely to get stung?
I'm just thinking like some of them, the aesthetic ones, who cares? Like,
Right.
I
Yeah.
couldn't be less convinced. But if a kid has an allergy, you know, that's a very real serious medical condition that needs to be handled separately from the I don't like boxes in backyards.
Yep, exactly. And
Do you
so-
have thoughts of how to do that? Do you have experience from how do other people handle this situation? How do you do urban bees when there are kids running around with bee allergies?
Yeah, so I can say, speaking for myself, when I started keeping bees on my home lot, I talked to my neighbors first, and you know they don't have kids with allergies. If one of their kids or one of my kids developed a bee allergy, which is a relatively rare thing, I think George, can you remind me what the bee allergy
One
percentage?
in 200, 300 individuals may develop a life-threatening allergy, but typically fewer even than that.
So if one of my kids, for example, you know, worst case scenario, the thing that's going to cause me to do, you know, the most conservative thing, my kid develops an allergy to bees. Am I going to get rid of bees in the yard? Probably not, but it would probably depend. My yard happens to be situated in a way where I have multiple fences between where my kids would play and where my bees are and where the public would be. And so I wouldn't worry about them playing around in the yard near where there are going to be a lot of bees. But, you know, I'd think long and hard about whether I wanted bees on my lot at that point, because it's a risk. And if I have a kid that I know has an allergy that might kill them if they're stung, yeah, I don't know what I would do in that scenario, to be perfectly honest.
I think the most compelling issue that I see here is you got one neighbor who could care less where their bees go and what happens, and you got another neighbor with a kid with an allergy, right?
Yep.
And the city's kind of stuck in the middle with liabilities or whatever.
So I think,
Like, are buffers widely used? Are there, you know, limiting number of bees
Yeah.
doesn't, I don't, not
So-
super.
what I would tell you is that if the kid lives 50 to 100 feet away, me getting rid of my bees is probably not going to change their risk profile in getting stung because the bees aren't hanging out there.
Yeah, like I'm just thinking about liability issues. You know,
Yep.
you as a city allowed my neighbor to put up bees, and then my kid died from a
Yep.
sting. Like,
But the bees aren't there solely because somebody's keeping bees.
no, of course not. I'm an ecologist, but I'm not thinking about this ecologically. I'm thinking about like legally or you know the city liability issues.
So
You don't want to be the one who's like, yeah, go ahead and do what you want in your backyard. Never mind the neighbors, right?
So I can give you a very pragmatic answer if you'd like. The city can't outlaw beekeeping on a residential lot because there's an Indiana state law that says you can't. So pragmatically, you know, regardless of whether the answer is should we outlaw it when you're next door to a kid that doesn't, even if you wanted to, you can't. And so I think the next best thing you can do is figure out, okay, what regulations or suggestions do we have to reduce the risk profile as much as we can? So I'd have to go look at the law, but I think it says something along the lines of you can set reasonable restrictions. And so, you know, suddenly...
There are restrictions in the city, is that right?
I do not believe there are any restrictions in the city.
Can I ask you,
Yeah.
just for, if you have the Langstrom boxes?
Langstrath boxes, yep.
If you have a single stack, and that would be one hive?
Yep, one colony.
And if you had 3 stacks, would
Yep.
that be 3 hives or
That'd be
1
3
colony?
hives. That would be 3 stacks, 3 colonies.
3
So-
stacks, 3 colonies, so each stack, but each box could have a hive.
No, each box, so the boxes are just giving them more space. So you can think about how tall it is vertically as just how big the hive is or how much resources it has in it.
Yeah, they're building on
I
for the
see.
condo,
So,
yeah.
so yeah, that's the stacking. And then multiple boxes would be
Yeah, so if I have
colonies?
2 colonies, so if I have,
They don't fight or?
No, so if you look at the commercial beekeepers, they will very happily have pallets of beehives sitting inches from each other, and they handle it very well. They can smell their own queen's pheromones. They know who the interlopers are, and they will kick them out if they're there. Although generally, if a bee comes in with nectar, they're gonna let them in anyway because you come bearing gifts. And so,
Can you have multiple or two hives, or a single hive split between two stacks, or are they always going to stack? And
no, they would. So if a queen, so the queen has to be kind of contiguous with the entire colony. And the scent of her pheromones is what keeps that colony from saying, we have an emergency, there's no queen, we need to make a new one.
Okay. So you could determine the number of
Colonies.
colonies by the boxes.
Yep.
But how many stacks? Although even that, just looking at that, so if you looked at my lot right now, you would see more stacks than you see colonies. So I always keep one empty stack there. Not so much because I might need it, but because if there is a swarm, either mine or somebody else's, I'm hoping they move in. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would rather have them move into my equipment than someplace else.
Gotcha.
That's where I have a question.
Yeah.
Because I've kept bees
Yeah.
for 3 years. I have 2 colonies,
Mhm.
and travel with them in a car is quite an adventure.
Yes.
However, my thought is maybe that's something we could suggest, is having an extra hive on hand or somehow, so that when there is a swarm, and you may not know when that would happen, which has happened to me, and then I'm wondering, what do I do? And then many of the bee stings that happen, I think, locally would not be from honeybees.
Yeah.
They would be from yellow jackets and wasps, mostly yellow jackets. So it seems like there would be a public education component behind this.
I would love if there was a public education component behind that. So it always irks me when, you see somebody getting chased by a yellow jack and they're like, bee is trying to sting me. And it's like, no, wait, sorry. The bee is not trying to sting you. A yellow jacket is. And again, they're jerks. But they're very important jerks that serve an important ecological purpose, but they're still jerks.
Is there a generally accepted recommendation amongst beekeepers for a maximum number of colonies to have in a certain area, or is it just whatever you can fit?
You don't want to oversaturate the entire area because eventually you're competing for nectar. But what is the right number? Commercial beekeepers will frequently drop 200 hives onto a farmer's lot and let them go do their thing. And that you don't have farmers that are constantly dealing with all sorts of bees that are bothering them. Otherwise, they wouldn't have those people there. And so, I couldn't tell you what the right number is there.
Okay. I didn't know if it differed for commercial farmers versus
So
lots.
I haven't seen anything that has said the right number for a backyard beekeeper would be X.
Do bees impact any invasive species or other pests?
Well, I guess in the strictest sense, everything we add to an ecosystem impacts
They're already
everything else.
If there's an influx, or if everybody started beekeeping, is there anything that would be impacted as a result?
If everyone started to beekeep at the same time, it's a good question. George, do you know the answer?
I do.
Excellent.
The native bees, there's 430 odd Indiana native bees. The more honeybees that we've got bringing into our community, the more it's going to push out the native bees. Because technically, honeybees are non-native. I wouldn't say invasive, but they're non-native.
There's some really cool research about the effectiveness of honeybees versus native bees and such. I think in an urban landscape, there's going to be pretty few. It's not like it's saturated with native bees because there's such little habitat for them. But it's an interesting point. It should.
You'd hope, yeah.
All right, so
I have one other question. Knowing that there is sometimes vandalism that happens to these large-scale productions where beehives get pushed over and destroyed. Do you know if we've had any vandalism that's happened to beehives in the
I have
community?
not heard of any in town. Anybody else?
I've had a bee colony rustled, but was 20 miles north of town. In town, I don't think you'd find a heck of a lot of that going on.
You got to have some brave vandals.
Yeah.
Brave or stupid.
All right, we should probably, we've got another guest speaker
sorry.
that we want to discuss.
I just have a question about the flyway wall. How tall should they be?
6 feet.
Okay.
At the end of the day, it could vary, but if you get them 6 feet high,
Gonna be
they're
over
going to be
everyone's
over
head.
everyone's
Yeah.
head. So, yeah.
I have one other question too before you skedaddle. I keep hearing you say 20 feet. 20 feet was that a number you were throwing out, or generally that's kind of an accepted distance from, a neighbor's lot you want to be, or kids waiting for the school bus would want to be from the hive? I just hear the 20 feet coming out, but I'm wondering where that number comes from.
So that's based on, two things really. So there's not a lot of research around it that I have seen. That is a combination of looking at their departure angles and
Just
looking
your
at my own
experience. Yeah.
personal hives.
Yeah.
I would say I would not want to put a hive closer than 5 or 10 feet from a neighbor, and I would want it at least 20 feet if I didn't have a flyaway barrier.
Thank you.
Speaking for myself.
Dave, I'll have a question.
Oh, yeah, Dave Rall, go ahead.
Hi, Dave.
Oh, thanks a lot. I'm sorry, I got another meeting coming up and I couldn't reschedule it, so I'm gonna have to jump off in a minute, but I'm gonna watch this video because I'm really interested in writing code specific to this for the council to pass. My general feeling is bees are really important and something that we ought to, obviously, regulating it is probably a good idea for everybody. And there was some code included from Wisconsin in the packet, which I think is really intriguing, and part of it was the setback. The setback there is only 3 feet, but anything less than, I think, 25 feet to the property line has to have some kind of, what is it called, a flyway? To kind of, to steer them up. And, but I just wanted your opinion. Sorry, Jason, is that right? Is that your name?
Yep.
Is 3 feet what you would recommend, or would you go more than that from the property line in your experience?
So difference in ordinance and kind of looking at it in the real world. So my neighbor's yard has dense bushes for the first 10 feet of their yard. And so I could put them smack on the property line and it wouldn't matter a bit because, they were there. That if they had a patio table right on the other side of that property line, I sure wouldn't want them 3 feet away. Yeah, what that means from an ordinance perspective is, I think there's a little bit more finesse to that than
Just getting a straight number.
Yeah.
Works for everything.
If there's a rule that says we can't prevent people having bees in urban areas, what are we discussing?
What the rules around them should be.
The reasonable
Like,
regulation.
can I stack them all
we can
on
regulate
the
it.
sidewalk next to the school bus, or do they have to be in the middle of my backyard, away from street view?
I don't know the state law. State law,
So
if
you-
get your hands off my bees, then.
So you are allowed to set reasonable restrictions. So you can require flyaway barriers, you can require setbacks, you can limit the number of hives, you can do any of those things. My understanding of the law is that you just can't say you can't
make it
keep bees.
impossible though.
Right,
Yeah.
reasonable.
Dave, did
So
you
my last question, or it's kind of a comment, is it looks like in Wisconsin, I can't find who is vested with the inspection. You submit a application to the treasurer's office of the city, but I'm thinking animal care and control would be probably the department, in order to, because they already handle things like chickens. So they come out to inspect, just to make sure everything's proper, and if there's any complaints, I assume that, this would be, if there's any problems, it would be complaint driven. So it would have to be sent to somebody, some office, somebody would be out to inspect or check it out, or I don't know, kind of, serve as a liaison between neighbors, maybe in some cases. So that's the other thing I'll be looking at is who's vested with the inspection and this, but I think it's fascinating. I'm gonna watch it later. I really appreciate you. I'm sorry I can't watch the other one, but I gotta run, and I'll watch it later. So,
Thanks, Dave.
thank you.
Could she throw the answer
Well,
after
at
that?
least
So
for the
so it's on
recording.
video?
Oh, yeah, for the, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I've got,
She's gonna speak on it.
Oh,
She's not a
okay.
public
Okay.
speaker.
Would
Perfect.
you like to trade now?
sure.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jason.
Last thing, plant trees and flowers. Help pollinators.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay.
Well, I'd like to echo everything you said. You're gonna make my job a whole lot easier, because, well done. And I want to start by.
What's your name?
Well, I'll start by saying my name's Jennifer Bland. I've been a beekeeper for 11 years. I taught beekeeping at Ivy Tech. But I want to tell you guys how much I appreciate you involving beekeepers in the conversation. I think it's really important, and a lot of gratitude for that. So,
Do you want me to pull up your slides?
no, that's all right. Because I don't, yeah. So, I live on 20 acres, and I've got about 10 hives now. The most I've had has been 10. That's a lot. It's probably too many for me personally, not for the area. So the reason, I'm just going to skip past what all the
All the
particulars,
education.
yeah, which was amazing. You might want to consider taking my place at Ivy Tech. So the main reasons that people keep bees are for honey, for pollination, and for income. And the way they do it for income is queen rearing. There's a gentleman here in Bloomington. He's got over 100 hives, and he makes queens, which is super important because there's a million reasons that you can lose a queen. And if you lose a queen, you lose your entire hive. So that's important. Selling nukes in the spring. There's a 50% winter loss average for beekeepers. So it's important that you have local beekeepers that sell nukes. And it's important that you get them locally because they're proven to overwinter in our climate.
Can you define nukes for the?
Yeah, good question. Okay, so a nuke is a typical hive. The Langstroth that he was talking about is a box about this big. It's got 10 frames in it. A nuke is 5. It's the essentials of what you would need to start at the beginning of the spring. So it's going to have 5 frames full of every stage of brood, from the egg, the larva, the pupa, and then the emerging bees and honey and pollen. So it's got everything you could need, just a little micro version. It's about that big. Another thing that they do is sell honey, which is great. So that's all great for commerce, right? So then I'm looking at friends with benefits. So are beekeepers, are we friends or are we enemies of the bees? I think that's up for debate. This is strictly my opinion. I'm a big fan of fact versus opinion, so I'm just going to throw it out there. It's my opinion that beekeepers are often a big threat to honeybees because so many people get into beekeeping that don't know what they're doing. They haven't had the education. I liken it to parenting, and you might agree. You have all these ideas of what you're going to do when you're a parent, and it's going to be easy, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and people just jump into it, and they haven't put a lot of thought into it. Then you get your bees or your babies, your children, and it's entirely different. And just like in life, there's some really great parents that really put thought into it and learn and do the best they can. Then there's other people that are like, meh, and the children suffer. So to me, I think beekeepers can do as much harm as help. And that's where education, my God, I would love to say that it should be a qualification to have a beekeeping class. That's unrealistic. But that would be like a dream of mine, that every beekeeper had to have a class. Are bees friend or foe? They're friends. the only thing that they do, I mean, bees are gonna be, they're just gonna do what they do. And the worst, I don't know, the worst thing that they do is protect their hive. And they're gonna sting, like he said, only if they have to sting, because they know they're gonna die if they do it, right? So the times that they're gonna sting is if they're provoked, if you go into a hive in conditions that you shouldn't go into, and if you've had a class, then you'll know not to go when it's overcast, when it's windy, when it's humid, when it's getting ready to rain, when it's dark. You make that mistake one time and one time only. So honeybees are not bad, and I completely agree. Everybody's like, oh, I'm getting chased by bees, and they're wasps. The venom from a honeybee is entirely different than a venom from a wasp. One is alkaline and one is acid. It's really rare to have a true allergy to honeybees. And even the reaction to a honeybee is less than a reaction from like a wasp or a yellow jacket. The second major thing, well, the biggest threat to honeybees is a varroa mite. So, and what that is it will come into a hive. It will hijack on the back of a bee while it's foraging. And so while they're all out foraging, they can kind of like jump on, kind of like fleas or ticks do with our dogs. They'll jump onto the backs of honeybees, and then the honeybees come back to the hive. And if it's a good, strong hive, a lot of times they can ward them off, but it's like their COVID, right? It just transmits like crazy, and then that weakens the hive, and then that leaves them susceptible and open to other viruses. Well, one problem with having a saturation of a lot of honeybees in an urban area is the close quarters and then the more easy spread of the varroa mites. So that's an issue. Some other reasons backyard beekeepers can be harmful. Again, it comes to education. They take too much honey. They should leave at least one super for them in the fall or in the winter. A lot of times they won't do that because they're like, oh, it's spring, we're gonna take all the honey, it's fine, there'll be more in the fall. Well, in Indiana especially, we don't know what's gonna happen with our weather in the fall. We could have all the rain during the buckwheat or the goldenrod, and then the honeybees end up dying. A lot of times the interventions that we do are actually more harmful than helpful. The bees are going to do what they're going to do despite what we do. So if a lot of times, like in the beginning, I was a helicopter parent to my bees, and I learned I'm free range now. I don't get in there and I don't like mess with them, because every time I would formulate a plan, I'd come back from the inspection, I'd formulate a plan, I'd be all nervous about it, and I'd go back 3 days later and they self-corrected. If I would have gone and done what I had planned on doing, it may not have worked out as well. So again, education, that's the key. And that was me having had a class and like poring over forums, and I had a mentor and I would call him. So I had all the resources necessary, and I was still probably not the best steward for my bees. That's enough about that.
Actually, can I ask a question about that real quick?
Absolutely.
If the city was deciding on ordinances for this, would you say that having 2 stacks, 1 empty, so I guess for available swarms and stuff like that, would be a good starting limitation, and then you would have to attend a class to get the education to have more than 2?
I mean, in a perfect world, that'd be great. I don't know how realistic that is to force a class on them.
No, to offer a class. I mean, everybody could have 2 stacks.
I mean,
and then to have more within city limits, they would have to attend the class, get certified, and then that would clear them for another number.
so yes, I've got a couple suggestions later down the road, but that's certainly.
I just wanted to get it all tucked in.
Yeah. No, I love it. Yes, thank you. Keep bringing it on. Yeah. So the times where I think that honeybees are a nuisance to the community is when they swarm, which Jason addressed. it happens typically in the spring. You've got a month where they're really prolific, and I mean, it's what they do. It's their form of keeping their species alive. When you're in the country, like I'm in the country, I don't have to worry about swarm management, which is great because, you know, I live out with all kinds of crops and all kinds of things. But when you're in town, you have to, like, swarm management is imperative if you're going to be doing urban beekeeping, I think, for a lot of reasons. And I mean, that's what scares the people. It looks menacing. It's not. I mean, like he said, the best place you can be is in the middle of a swarm. It's magical. Watching the swarm go through is amazing. Like, you can see when they're starting to land. You can see, like, you know how in the summertime when you're driving along and you can see like the energy waves on the road, it looks like water. You can see that in the trees. Like, it's just, I mean, if everybody in town could see a swarm, that'd be cool. But it looks menacing and it looks scary. And the problem is they end up in places that we don't want them. They end up in people's homes. They end up temporarily, they'll land in random weird places. And that's not such a big deal because, like Jason said, it's anywhere from an hour to 3 days and then they're gone. But where they do end up eventually may not be where somebody wants them. It may be in a tree that they don't, you know, they've got a kid swing in it. So that's a problem. Honeybees love chlorinated water. So people that have swimming pools nearby, Bryan Park Pool, Mills Pool, that could be an issue. It's something to think about.
What about saltwater pools?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
Minerals out of that?
yeah, they just love clean water. I mean, you could put fresh water out for them, but they're going to go to the pool. And I don't.
And the chlorine doesn't hurt them?
No, they like it. I don't know why. I don't know why. And I don't know. I mean, beekeepers have tried to figure this out for eons, how to manage that, and nobody's figured it out. So that's how they can be a nuisance. A honeybee swarm is usually about 10,000 honeybees, which looks really scary. And again, there's the most docile state. You can just go up to them with your hands and gently do that, and they'll fall into a box, and it's cool. So how honeybees can become a nuisance to the environment, too much saturation in an area will deplete the resources, and it can be unsustainable. There was a study done, a Swiss study in 2018 on sustainability of the honeybees in an urban setting. It wasn't the most scientific and it wasn't the most extensive, but what they came up with over, I think, a 3-year period was that it wasn't beneficial for the honeybees. So that kind of sucks. And then I talked about the 430 Indiana native species that it could potentially push out. I think highly encouraging habitats for native bees and education with that. Waiting in the spring to clear your garden, because a lot of pollinator bees will build their homes that are solitary bees. Most of them are, and they'll build in like stalks from dead. Yeah. So just waiting until later in the spring to clear the garden can be helpful. And if that pushes out the pollinator or the native bees, then that's a lack of biodiversity. And too many honeybees, like I said, with the varroa mites, they can spread disease because it's communicable. So I think it's really important, if you're going to be an urban beekeeper, to have good stewardship, get educated before getting honeybees, provide adequate space, food, water source, swarm management, disease and pest control. You got to get in the hives and inspect them to make sure that they don't have diseases and pests, so they're not passing it on to other bees. Here are some fun facts. Like Jason said, they have a foraging radius of up to 5 miles. 2 miles is their sweet spot. So yeah, you put your hives out, they're not going to be in your yard. Which, to your point, asking, somebody says, oh, your honeybees stung my child. There's no way that we would know. Was it it was probably a hive 3 miles away. It could have been a yellow jacket. There's absolutely no way to prove or to know if it was one of your bees unless you saw it come out of the hive. And so that's, having said that, I don't have a child that has an allergy. So, of course it's logical. Yes, that hive probably is where it came from, but there's really no way of knowing that for sure.
Just on that topic, I was allergic. As a kid, I got stung by, it wasn't bees, but it was a hive of wasps. I got stung by 20, 25 times, almost died. So I always had that, the stick you put in your leg. And I've been stung by a bee a week and a half ago. No problem. It's more the wasps and the hornets.
Yeah.
And those guys that are really the issues.
Yeah, entirely different venoms. Yeah. A lot of things can deprive honeybees of adequate food source. When nature can't provide enough nectar or pollen, then honeybees have to feed their hive. And that's what helps keep them also disease-free. The problem with that, and this isn't relevant to this conversation, it's just a fun fact, but beekeepers will feed their hives the honey or the sugar water, and then they might sell it as honey. And commercial beekeepers do this too. A lot of times you'll buy honey in the grocery stores and it's not actually honey, it's just honey, it's honeybee processed sugar water. And a cool way you can tell this, and this is absolutely bonkers and it sounds like I don't know, it's like witch work or something, but you take some honey and you put it on a plate, you put a little bit of water on it, and you swirl it around like you're painting for gold. And I kid you not, you will see a pattern of a honeycomb come across the top. It is the wild. I've tried it out with my honey and it worked. It is the wildest thing. Have you heard this? No. Have you heard this?
No, but I'm
Try it.
surprised because internationally there is a lot of effort to try to find diluted honey.
Yeah.
And it's been a bit of an arms race. There's an interesting documentary on it.
I've seen it, yeah.
It's getting to the point where even using molecular assays, you're not able to determine. So
Try
I'm
it.
surprised.
Yeah, try it. It's wild. So in the height of summer, an average average colony contains about 50,000 bees. All the workers are female, and they have their specific job.
I'm just going to cut off real quick in the interest of time.
Yes.
We want to focus. The facts are amazing.
The solutions.
But yeah, let's focus on.
Okay. So this one thing. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think registering hives would be a really good idea. You register them, and then so we did a timber stand thing with the DNR, and we had to register that, and then I think his name was Ralph Ungersol. He worked for DNR, and he came and he checked out what we had. Well, we have a state apiarist. Her name's Kathleen Prow. So, like with the timber stand, I think if a person registered their bees, and then she would do, with that information, she would do a surprise inspection. Once every year, once every 3 years, we don't know. But that keeps the beekeepers honest and doing all the things that they're supposed to do. It could be like a lottery. But I think I like the idea of registering more so than licensing. It sounds less invasive as a beekeeper. It could mean the exact same thing, but I think calling it registering is helpful. Highly encourage education. I like the idea of 2 hives for the first acre, and then 1 additional hive per acre after that. And really, honestly, there's not going to be a big difference between 3 hives and 2 hives, but just for the sake of, and as far as sustainability in the environment, but for the sake of neighbors and optics and comfort level of the community. I think, and then if you're also, like, I don't know what's happening with the annexation conversation, but like 5 hives in town on 5 acres looks very different than 5 acres further out of town. Still within the city limits, do with that what you will. I like and 20 feet is exactly what I had in here, 20 feet from the road, sidewalk, entrance, or property line. That pretty much takes care of how many you can have. I mean, that alone kind of says a lot. Honeybees come out of their hive 5 feet and then go straight up, like Jason said. The guard bees are the ones that are in front of the hive, and they're the ones that are defensive, mainly during the fall. So spring and fall are your 2 times where you're going to be most likely to upset passerbys and use swarm control. Super important, I think, whatever decisions are made, I think it's important to have some sort of a conversation and communication with beekeepers and let them know why the codes are important. Because I know there's going to be pushback, and it's going to feel like, get off my kids, get off me. If they have the education, they're not going to be upset. They're going to appreciate it. If they don't have the education, they need to be told why it's important as for the safety of the community, sustainability, and health of the honeybees. And I've included some resources, Kathleen Prow, the Chief Apiary Inspector, and I've also submitted an example of a city of in Indiana that's got a pretty good template for writing codes and that kind of thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So our next spot was
Question real quick.
Oh,
I
yeah,
have
sorry.
one question. I heard you say 2 boxes for the first acre. Does that mean if you own less than an acre of land, you probably shouldn't keep bees? Because I'm coming from a social sustainability. My working group focuses on social and economic sustainability. So socially, if we're thinking about equitable beekeeping, we want everyone to have the education. But if you're not in the socioeconomic class to afford an acre of land in Bloomington, which I'm not, so.
And if it were on a roof, sure. So I think the 20 feet kind of answers that, really. If you can do it, you know, if your house isn't in the middle of the property and you can do it and not have it 20 feet from
your neighbors or the sidewalk.
Yeah. But a rooftop would be ideal. Like, I think Cardinal Spirits used to have them on the roof. Amazing. Like, I think.
Great, wonderful. I just had that one question because I know you said 1 acre, so.
For what it's
All
worth,
right.
I'm on 4/10 of an acre, have 5, and they are not within 35 feet of any property line.
Awesome.
So, you
So
know,
it can be done.
it depends on a lot.
And there's,
Okay.
is there,
So we should move on to public comment now. 'Cause-
just one more thing, the observational beekeeping, where people like put them in their houses with the windows.
Oh, yeah.
Is that, I mean, it's gonna follow the same kind of, standards, right?
It's still a colony, but as George and I were discussing just before the meeting, you're probably going to kill the bees by the end of the year.
Oh, really?
They rarely overwinter successfully.
I see, okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you to the guests for coming and speaking, and we'll move on to public comment now. So is there anyone from the public who would like to comment? George.
I guess I'm the last speaker, and I'll thank the previous 2 speakers for all the bee biology. I think they've pretty much covered the situation. My name is George Hageman. I'm a retired microbiologist from IU, and I've been keeping bees since about the early 70s when my family moved to Bloomington. And I've had from 1 to 12 hives in many different venues and locations. I manage the bees in the community orchard, Hilltop Garden and Nature Center, Wonder Lab. I started the bees over in Meadowood, which Jason now has inherited responsibility for. And I think the whole issue of beekeeping is a very fascinating one from an educational point of view. We give classes for the kids at Child's School. At the community orchard, we offer programs for kids regularly. Wonder Lab, we do the junior master gardeners, and during the summer, kids from Wonder Lab too. So it's not just a matter of aesthetics or being in touch with nature, or making honey or beeswax. It's also a lot of educational functions which are important, I think, for everybody, but particularly young people. Basically, taking care of bees in town is not difficult if you simply observe the rules that Jason suggested, namely that you provide some sort of a barrier so the bees fly up before they fly out, and when they fly back, they have to go over that before going into the hive. You can put a beehive very close to a sidewalk or a road if that sort of barrier is provided. And it can be bushes, it can be a fence, it can be a lot of different things. But as a matter of obvious good neighborliness and common sense, putting the bees in the back of the yard, away from things, even camouflaging them, painting the beehive camouflage colors isn't a bad idea if you think that people are going to, say, engage in vandalism, or there are a lot of kids in the neighborhood who like to throw rocks at things or things of that sort, because it happens. But mostly it's just a matter, at least it has been for me over 50 years, of being a good neighbor, using common sense, observing bee biology. If you're talking about limiting the number of hives, it's best to have more than one hive, because there are many, many incidents in the course of beekeeping where you want to interchange equipment or move hives or use alternate equipment for one reason or another. So simply limiting it to one hive is a little, would create difficulties for beekeepers potentially. Limiting the number makes a certain amount of sense. You don't want to overcrowd a particular yard, and you don't want to overcrowd the town or the bee pasture provided by the town and by the roadsides and the fence lines and the gardens and all of those things which constitute the source of pollen and nectar that the bees need. So, common sense. I think that's the watchword, and it's mostly just a matter of keeping the bees away from people and the people away from the bees. As far as things like allergy and responsibility go, EpiPens are widely used by people with peanut butter allergies and other kinds of allergies. There is cross-reactivity between all the Hymenoptera to some extent, not necessarily in a particular combination or a particular person, but somebody who's allergic to a yellow jacket can get stung by a wasp and have a reaction of the same kind that a person stung by a bee is going to have. They can be life-threatening. That's why EpiPens are used and distributed, and instructions are given that you should hie yourself to the emergency room if you have trouble breathing or get swelling at some distal site from where you got stung. And that's important. It's just common sense. But as far as the regulations concerning keeping the bees, there are all sorts in various towns. In fact, there's a whole database in Minnesota of every town's regulations, and you can visit it and have a look at it and see what it gives you in the way of a range. But it's everything from no bees anywhere here to everywhere.
Go wild.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll leave you with that thought.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
And a quick thank you, because I remember when I started my hives, you allowed me to come and see yours, so thank you
Sure.
for that. Mine is, it's kind of, the map is not the territory. We're talking about feet from property lines. However, I had mine closer to like 15 feet from my neighbor's property line when I had them, and they were fine with that because there is an elevation change. So, you know, when should we consider anything in regards to elevation change? Because sometimes it can be quite dramatic.
If they're 10 feet higher than the neighbor's property,
Right.
you need to put a wall up.
Right,
Something like that.
exactly. And should the setback be 20 feet? Can it be more like 15 because the elevation change is going to be like 10 or 15?
I'd look for something in the verbiage of such regulation as a reasonable barrier.
Okay.
Fence, bushes, elevation, put them on your balcony, whatever it takes to get them out of the traffic pattern of the people and automobiles nearby.
Maybe it could be like proximity of the hive opening. Because if the hive opening is up on a hill, it doesn't need to be,
20 feet from the proximity of the opening, is
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Which includes elevation, yeah.
that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we're
And
saying,
of course, the barrier, considering that to be a fence, a structure, elevation,
so,
There's
Vegetation.
a lot of areas.
vegetation.
It's gonna be hard.
well, that's what I was gonna say is,
That's
All right,
policy.
if we're gonna
60 more
recommend
seconds,
this,
then
if
we're
we're
gonna
gonna recommend city ordinance to build a framework for these conditions, a good start would be site conditions, a tiered based stack number, and education, so that if they're registering them, that they know, at least have a basic fundamental understanding of how to do it.
The state governs the registration of beehives. Everybody's supposed to get a beekeeper number. Mine is 5334. 53 from Monroe County, 34, that's me. And the state apiculturist knows that that's me and sends out inspectors periodically to check on my bees. If you're talking about locations within the town and making regulations here, then it makes good sense to put it in the hands of animal control and have one person who can wrangle bees there and make judgments about how to locate a hive and use good common sense in helping people keep bees in a safe way.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you very much.
No, all the best today, for sure.
Yes, thank you very much.
Very educational.
Okay, we'll move on to the report from the staff liaison. Sean?
Do you want to give her a presentation to me? Oh, she's there. Oh.
Well, so we had
It
moved
can
the
be
beekeeping, the guest speakers up.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, okay. Okay, great. This was in the packet. So I first just wanted to go through the Climate Action Plan dashboard. I haven't talked about it since it was launched in April. So we're very proud of this dashboard. It has a lot of information about all the ways that we're implementing our Climate Action Plan. So you can go through it. It has our greenhouse gas emissions inventory. You can look at it, emissions by sector, municipal emissions. This was the inventory that we did last year. So there's just a lot of different information points that you can click on and learn more about. So I just want to walk through how to do that. So we included information about climate change. What is climate change? If someone comes to the dashboard and they want to learn more about what is causing climate change and why is it significant, what is some of the terminology that we use, so adaptation and resilience, how is climate change impacting Bloomington? So we've got some information there, vector-borne diseases and all the different sectors that it impacts. And of course, what is causing climate change? So some top actions that residents can take to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. You can click on things on the left here if you want to learn about upgrading to an electric vehicle. Let me try to move this. And then we have resources here on the side, the IRS EV tax credit, Duke Energy EV selector guide, and PlugShare. So different resources on every page, public transit, and every page you'll see different resources about increasing public transit. So home energy efficiency, there's home energy yardstick, Duke Energy's home energy report. So just a wealth of information here for our residents. How to upgrade to energy efficiency home appliances. And then we have some of our resources here in Bloomington, our Bloomington Green Home Improvement Program. In a couple of months, we're going to be relaunching this program, and I'll give you information about that, but that's something to keep an eye out for. We're going to be increasing our rebate amounts. Energy Star product finder, so just a wealth of information. Installing solar and battery systems to power your home with clean energy. Again, home energy tax credits, and then the Bloomington Green Home Improvement Program. So you can scroll down how big of an impact do solar panels and batteries make on my carbon footprint. So just a lot of frequently asked questions about solar panels that you can find more information about there. And then our climate action plan is broken to different sectors, so they're listed there: energy and built environment, transportation and land use, waste management, water and wastewater, local food and agriculture, resilience, ecosystem health, climate economy, community engagement, so how we engage the community with our climate action plan. And this is from the climate resilience community workshops that I held last year. And so for each of the sectors in the climate action plan, this is what the city is doing here on the first page, and then you can click on what you can do. So, so this is just more in depth here than the top 5 actions. So I'm going to go through that, and then Project 46. So that's the Regional Climate Alliance between Bloomington, Nashville, and Columbus. So that's our page for that. So have any of you gone through the dashboard and taken a look? No?
Mm-hmm.
But there's just so much information here. Each page you see the greenhouse gas emission by the sector. If you want to start a composting bin, you can learn about that. Single-use plastic waste, recycling. We've tried to make it as comprehensive as we could. So this took about 9 months to compile all of this information together. So you could spend a lot of time going through here and looking at different sectors and different actions. Water, wastewater. So we're going to be continually updating this dashboard with new information, events that are happening. So I don't know if we haven't added any announcements yet, but yeah, so it's a great resource for our community, and I really want to try to spread the word about this dashboard. If you can spread the word within your networks, at work, your friends, family, I would really appreciate it.
It looks really good, Sean.
Yeah.
It looks very user friendly.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
I like that. What the city's doing, and here's what you can do very simply.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, so.
And I like how the city's resources are attacked on the side
Yeah.
for grants and things
Right.
like that.
Yeah. Energy efficiency in buildings. So even some projects that we're working on. So for energy efficiency, we've hired Donovan Energy. They're conducting energy audits on all of our municipal buildings. They're proposing projects. Now, I'll talk about a few of those in a second. But any questions about any of this?
This is different than you showed us a different dashboard, which you wanted people to go and had actual actions, and it would like show you what you could do and your impact. That's different.
That's different than
Okay.
this. Yeah, you're talking about the Zero in Bloomington
Zero in
dashboard,
Bloomington,
where
yes.
you can go in and you can track your individual actions.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and you can have competitions with different groups.
Right.
So, yeah. So if you want to learn about Hopewell, there's information on there. We hired the green engineer to help us achieve LEED for neighborhood development. So I've tried to put everything, all the vendors that I've hired this past year are in here. So yeah, so lots of different information. Co-benefits, how does it help our community? So racial and social equity, economic development, you can read about all of these things. But
Do you think the Zero in Bloomington could be integrated somewhere in the site too?
it is, yeah, there's a
Okay.
link in here somewhere.
Oh, okay,
To
yeah,
go right
I'm
to-
guessing that's what users are thinking too.
Yeah,
And
so
where
Is
do
there
you
a
find
link in there
this?
somewhere?
Yeah, where do you find this for
Yeah.
both of those sites from the city webpage?
on the sustainability webpage,
Okay.
I don't have it pulled up, but right, if you go to Sustainable Bloomington, the dashboard is kind of the first thing that is there, and you can click on it. Yeah, and then Zero in Bloomington is on one of the tiles further down.
Okay.
Yeah, but here are pictures of all of our municipal sites. We currently have 34 municipal sites. And so the last I checked, we were producing 3.9 megawatts. So, very extensive program. So yeah, just go through here, and we try to put some metrics that we're going to be updating every year. how much money we funded for low-income solar grants. That'll be updated every year. The number of businesses that we have provided solar installations and energy efficiency or lighting projects. So we're up to 36 now. So it's a great tool for our city. It's a way for us to be transparent about how we're implementing our CAP. So, Beat the Heat implementation team, I want to bring this to your attention. I'm working with Parks and Rec. We're launching a free swimming days at city public pools. And so I really want to spread the word out about that. We're hoping to launch that by this weekend if it's possible, because our heat index is going to be very high starting this weekend. Last I checked, our heat index is going to be up to 101. So we're really hoping to launch the free swimming days to city public pools. I'm also working with Wonder Lab to have reduced admission prices for Wonder Lab during extreme heat days. I want to give you an update on the NOAA Heat Watch campaign. That's where we're working with NOAA. We're going to be mapping our urban heat island. Right now I have about 28 volunteers registered. We're looking to have at least 50. So again, if you want to spread the word about that, I had flyers at the last meeting, but I can email those out again. So I have an intern who's working really hard. He's been communicating with all of the boards and commissions, our neighborhood associations. He's been going to meetings and really trying to recruit more volunteers. The urban gardening implementation team that I've helped create, we had our first meeting and Matt was there. He's on the team. We had our first meeting last Wednesday, and I think it's going to be a great team. We're going to be hopefully working on increasing urban gardening in the city. So it's just starting, but we've got a lot of work to do to figure that out. I want to give you an update on Project 46. We applied for a climate pollution reduction grant earlier this year. So it's an EPA grant that IDEM is pursuing. And to be a part of IDEM's grant application, we had to submit proposals. And so IDEM selected 6 out of the 11 proposals that we submitted. The total is worth $38 million. And so there's the list of the projects that they selected. And so this grant is a little bit different. We should know in July whether EPA is going to approve IDEM's application, but this is not a grant where IDEM will receive the funding and they will give the funding directly to Project 46. It's more set up where we will receive quotes from contractors and we will submit the invoices to IDEM and then they will pay us that way. So it's not a lump sum or anything like that. So we're working on getting all the logistics in place in case we are approved.
What's a micro mobility hub?
Yeah, that's a hub where you can plug in your e-bike or your e-scooter. And so,
okay.
Yep, so we'll have those around town. City Hall LED lighting project, we submitted an application for, it's called EECBG, Energy Efficiency Community Block Grant, and we were approved for $141,000. And so we're going to use that, it's called a voucher, to pay for new LED lights in City Hall. Some of the LEDs are from 1998. So we're excited about that project. We'll be issuing the RFP hopefully soon. And then Donovan Energy, they're helping us with these 2 bottom projects. They identified a grant that we're pursuing. It's called Empowering Energy Partnerships in Indiana Communities. It's called EPIC grant. So we're waiting for the proposal from Donovan. We should be getting that soon. But it's for Buskirk Chumley Theater. We're going to be proposing that we install solar, and we have a cool roof, updated lighting, LED lighting, and an EV charger for Buskirk Chumley parking. So they wanted it to be a community-facing project, and so this fit perfectly with Buskirk Chumley Theater. And so I'll keep you updated on that.
Sean, can you remind me of the amount of funding we have available in this commission?
$10,000.
And how much of that have we spent?
0.
6 months in?
Yeah.
So that's 10,000 for our own projects, and then there's the 10,000 for the neighborhoods, which we.
Right.
Yeah. Have we spent any of the suitable neighborhoods?
We provided 1 grant.
The one from last year?
Last year.
Yes, 2023.
Yeah.
So we're like 0 out of 20,000.
halfway through the year.
I don't think, I
This
think,
is not on you, this is on.
We're also on
Yeah.
50% committee members, so.
Right, we had,
When we
we had
get some more committee members, I think we can
meetings this
spend
year.
some
we
money.
had 3 meetings this
Right.
week that were.
I think Ellie's, the Garden Quest funding came out of 2024 budget. I don't think it was
Oh, it
approved.
did not.
What?
Oh, I thought it was 2023.
I think by the time
Definitely
everything,
proposed before the end of the year.
well, everything has to be in place. If I wanted to save the
Okay, so
2023
can
funding.
can we know maybe next meeting what the total in the community funds is then, if
It's either-
money has been used?
It's either
Yeah,
9 or
it's
10,000.
It's 9,000. There you go, you got it, 9,000.
So it's for sure 9, so that wasn't taken from last year's, cause I remember that,
We were
that was
working-
supposed to be submitted to
We
you,
were,
actually,
we
his
were working
proposal.
hard.
It was.
But we were,
Yeah.
but he instead you brought it to the meeting, cause we were there at the end of the deadline, so.
Not having enough money is not our problem, we're unable to spend money right now.
Right, we got
So-
more than we need, so.
Beekeeping's cool, but like, we have money to, halfway through the year, we have no,
We've only had 3
It's
actual
cycle
meetings,
Yeah,
so.
right.
And I don't know that the community really knows that that the funding is available.
Right.
We're trying to get the word out, but I'm not receiving any proposals for
Mhm.
the Bee Coast grants, so.
do you expect that if we don't spend this money this year, we'll lose it?
Does it revert back
It's
to
a
the general
loser.
fund?
It
No,
reverts back.
no.
That we won't have it again in
They will
2025.
Oh,
give it to us
yeah.
next year,
I
so
will
like, you don't know how
request
to
it.
spend money, why
Yeah,
would we give you
I
more
mean,
money?
there's no
Right.
panic. I will be requesting this funding every year,
Sure.
but
All right.
so.
Okay.
We can't,
Yeah,
we have
I
no
think
control
that
over the
several
grants.
people had, I mean, I had a whole proposal written for last year, but things were pretty disillusioned because the process was so late, and then we need new members.
You've been so critical about that. I just want to say that I started my position in April.
That's totally
And
fine,
I've
I'm not
tried so
blaming
hard to-
anyone.
Yeah,
for
I-
saying,
You know, you
I'm
see
just
all the
There's a
saying-
projects
process
that
here,
were-
and it's like, we have a whole year to go through it, we're 6
Yeah,
months
it-
in, we haven't done anything yet.
Yeah, it takes
Not
time
that we haven't
to
done stuff,
to
but
lift
like,
everything up.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you can't just, like, you know, I did the same thing, but like, there is a process, you know, if you wanna hire a
Right.
person, you have to go through the hiring process, and
I
like,
mean, I
Right,
can
and
go
that's
to the
what,
dashboard again, and I can show you everything I've worked on
that's what was
this
so
past year.
important.
Yeah,
that
I
we-
don't-
That we did what we did
Yeah.
last year so we could start
So critical.
figuring out the process. But yes,
in
nobody's
6
bringing,
months in, we
nobody's bringing
I
any
just
ideas
wanna
in.
point that
And
out.
it is what it is, but it's not on Sean.
Well, we couldn't even
Right.
vote
I brought
on
an
any
idea
ideas.
and.
Correct.
So,
Okay. Yep. So we should all be
Thank
thinking
you
of
for all
ideas
your
for
hard
sure.
work, Sean.
And yeah.
What'd you
Yes.
say?
I mean, I'm
So
not
thank you
hating
for all
on
your hard
Sean,
work.
I'm
Yeah.
just saying that, you know, we did prepare some ideas, and so it'd be great if we could pull those back out from last year. and
Absolutely.
kind of revitalize
Absolutely.
them,
Yes.
but we don't have the manpower, and, you know.
What
it's
are you
not something-
what are you lacking?
There's 0 people on my working group committee right now. 2 members were not reappointed. And so that's kind of left.
And that's not on me.
That's not on
again.
Sean.
No,
it's-
I'm just saying
Well,
that's
you
where
pointed,
I'm
you pointed
at.
that way as if it was.
But
I mean, if you
As
had
the
got the
staff
grant, you
liaison,
would
you
have
are
lost the
representing-
people and it would have been a problem, so like.
Problem is that
We're-
we haven't had meetings because I had a proposal, we didn't have any meetings. It died on the table.
So we are running very long on this meeting so far.
5 minutes left.
Do we want to try to get through just a couple quick updates that we still have on the agenda and maybe push some things
Sure.
to the next time? These are all important things that we need to talk about. I just don't know if we have a whole lot more time today to do it.
So Jamie, do you want to do yours or is that not enough time?
4 minutes.
I'll go ahead and I'll pick it up next time if I
Okay.
can have more time
Yeah.
for next time.
One of them guest speakers.
Yep. Okay, excellent. So we'll do reports from commissioners. So I had a few slides just with some details about the commission itself and sort of how it's structured, where the authorities come from, what's in the bylaws, that sort of thing, the sustainability development goals, that we try to align to. I'll save some of those slides and going into detail with that until next time, just in the interest of time here. But I think, this conversation we were just having is a good example of, putting in place in this commission more of, a way to have some structure to get business done, and then also having some sort of venue where we can have these sort of brainstormy discussions where we're kind of asking questions about things we're curious about and trying to discover some more, you come up with ideas and that sort of thing. And I don't know what would be the best way to go about doing that. We could have separate working sessions where people come to brainstorm stuff and then kind of funnel things into these
Agenda
monthly
items,
business
yeah.
meetings. Or we could do some other paradigm, because I know, nobody likes another meeting on their calendars, right? So there might be a better way to do it. I might put together an easy Google Forms survey to just send around and get everyone's ideas about what you think would be a good way to go about doing that. Because I think we've had a lot of meetings where we've said we need to reevaluate exactly how we operate, and these things, work okay, and these things are not working, and what should we even do with working groups exactly? And it would be a good idea to maybe have flesh out some of that stuff outside of this meeting session when we have other things to get through. So I'll talk more about that at another meeting, and I'll yield the rest of my time. So Caitlin, did you want to talk a little bit about just transitions?
Yeah. I think last meeting I brought up the fact that I wanted to make a motion to absolve the Just Transitions working group and hopefully use the information that was still saved from that working group to maybe create a new working group that, again, lives in that social, economic, sustainability area. I joined that working group because it was the only semblance of anything I found interesting when I first joined, and it was the only thing that was available. And so, but I jumped in when things were kind of halfway through, and it was such a diverse and opinionated group. It was very hard to corral cats. So that's kind of where we left off. The frustration from last year was because we did finally get our crew together enough to create a proposal that was of 2 parts. We sent it to Sean, I think, the week before the meeting, and she told us that was not going to happen because we needed an extra week for approval. The following meeting, a different proposal came through, and we were able to confirm that and approve that and vote on it the night of. This year, I think we're in a great position to, like everyone said, follow the process now that we know the process, and avoid that. Yeah, avoid that in the future. So basically, my announcement is just open. I don't see a lot of new faces. Like, I don't see any new committee members being appointed. So that was my hope, is that maybe there'd be some new faces today from the mayor's office or councilor or somebody to see who is interested in this work. I know we have waste management. The heat management committee kind of has gone a different way now. And so there's not much left on the social or economic sustainability side. We decided not to marry the environmental commission. So I think social economic sustainability still has a really important part in this committee. I have 2 more meetings left, and I'd love to use those meetings to bring somebody into the fold and empower them to continue the work if possible. That's what I'd like. So if anybody has interest in there, I also have been petitioning to try to get people involved. I forwarded them the application link. I don't know, I'm assuming that's the number one thing, is to just forward people the application link if they want to join. So that's where I've been at. I've been promoting to try to get someone to fill my position, and hopefully some of these other vacant positions, so that we aren't here in 6 months having only met a few times with little work being able to put through. So.
Perfect. Thank you. Matt, did you have anything new from waste management?
Real quick, we got our first compost captain, and they have 3 neighbors that they are picking up food waste for, and then we have a second neighborhood that is another neighborhood that's going to become a compost captain. So we'll have 3 neighborhoods with 3 compost captains. Awesome. Going and hopefully spreading from there. But the city of Bloomington does not allow us to train or to teach on our property about composting and about Japanese bokashi. So I have this guy, which I'll ask you guys to sign, which is a petition to get city code changed.
Sorry, guys.
Perfect. Sounds good. Yeah.
You can ask me after though.
Yeah. Thanks for the report. Okay, so we'll come back to Jamie next meeting and spend a little bit more time talking about that. So I think that brings us to the end. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. Yeah, without objection. Or sorry, second. Yeah,
Second.
Yeah. Without objection, we're adjourned. So we'll meet again at July 9th, 2024 at 6 p.m. Adjourned at 7:31.